You're watching the Three and You Giant Fans podcast brought to you by Scott, Giant, Mike and Cardone. We're sponsored by Manscaped.com. Use code AGREYMAN to get a 20% discount and free shipping. And download our audio podcast at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
So we are the Three Angry Giant Fans, and much like the rest of the nation discussing the playoff games, championship games, that was a discussion of the controversial do-over play, where the officials keep inserting themselves into key moments, but there's a good point there that they're making about why can't they just let a play go on if no one stopped moving or whatever. There's no whistle that audibly blew. And why not go back and reset the clock after the play rather than just get rid of the play and have them do a do-over? And there was a good point there. If there were whistles, no one heard the whistles. Why weren't there 5-6 whistles going instead of just one guy's whistle or something, I mean,
Yeah. I think was it one of you guys on the text that made the point, or did I hear this on TV that how did no one hear the whistles if the Chiefs had the ball? It was that stadium was a morgue at that point, wasn't it? I mean,
I made that point because I was like, the Chiefs have the ball. The stadium's not roaring like like a maniac because they're letting the home team offense operate.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's just amazing how pissed off I can get just watching a game as a fan, let alone if that's like the Giants playoff game and that bullshit goes on, right? It's these officials, man. It's been a big topic of conversation on a lot of the sports talk shows the past couple of days. So we'll get into it. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to interject there quickly.
You're dead on. I mean, I don't get it, and I'll let Scott finish the intro. Hopefully we can come back to this play because I have more things to say about it, but I don't want to take up too much pre-intro time here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll do the intro. We are the Three Angry Giant Fans. Your host Scott, Giant, Mike and Cardone, and I think a lot of this episode is going to be they're discussing some of the officiating calls that were made and the impact it had versus especially last year and some of the earlier games we saw in this postseason where we came away very impressed with the players deciding the games and not being, not there being much influence from the referees. But before we get into that, let's give a little shout out. We've been doing smaller towns. This one's sort of a bigger town. And I picked it for a reason. So, hello, Greensboro, North Carolina.
Greensboro.
So Greensboro, it's up the road from us, where we are around the Charlotte area. But it used to be the home of the ACC tournament for many years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was basically always a home court game for both Duke and North Carolina. And they would cruise into the finals of the ACC championship almost every year. Yep. And then when the NCAA tournament would come around the following week or the 2 weeks after that, there was almost always a regional game in Greensboro that Duke or North Carolina would.
Yeah. Mostly, I kind of remember that as Duke being more that Duke took advantage of that more. Duke was the number one seed, and they were at the Greensboro Regional. That was.
I could swear that Duke wouldn't get on it, leave town until like at least the Final Four. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Syracuse would make the tournament. Their opening round game is in Pepperdine.
Yeah, Wichita. I remember Syracuse at the number one seed in Wichita one time, maybe the number 2 seed.
No, I had to laugh. I remember when I first moved down here, we went up to the ACC tournament a couple times. It was great because you'd stand outside and wait for people to leave. If their team lost, they'd sell you tickets really cheaply. But it was a tough ticket to get if you didn't have one to start with. I mean, it was. And then when you got in there, all the home teams or all the teams were sitting in sections. Like you were with the Wake Forest people if you're a Wake Forest fan and so forth. So it was a good time, fun time.
So we don't get any like history of Greensboro on this one.
We don't really get history other than the reminiscing of the ACC tournament. But I will say we did have a download this week from Australia. So we had one down under in Sydney.
All right.
Wow.
Hey, mate.
That's awesome.
I don't know.
I'm so resisting saying shrimp on the Barbie right now because it's so
cliche.
I can't. I'm not going to do it.
We also had 4 downloads from Philly, and I'm thinking they were Eagle fans because we don't usually have much of a presence in Philly.
Hey, if you guys are still listening there in Philly, hey man, fuck off.
It's a Philly thing. Or it's the
Yeah.
East Rutherford thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want your kind here.
Yeah, it's an East Rutherford thing.
So Mike was talking a little
Scumbags.
bit about going back to that play, but before we go there, let's talk a little bit about the Philly game, because there was a share of bad calls in that game as well, and even one that wasn't necessarily a bad call, it was a missed call, but Shanahan not challenging that reception by Devonta Smith on the first drive. That was a crucial mistake, and here's what I don't understand: it's the first drive of the game. It's the first half of a game. You don't need 3 timeouts in the first half. Burn one.
Yeah.
It's a 4th down play. It's a turnover on downs if it's an incomplete pass. And it sure enough looked like it was borderline enough to make a call there.
Huge. I mean, that is huge. And I get it. The gamesmanship of the team running up to the ball. And if you're a head coach, you don't want to get suckered into that. But to Scott's point, it's a big enough play where you risk it at that point. I mean, it's 4th down. It's turnover on downs. It's huge. And I have some other, where's the expedited review on that? A bunch of questions about that.
Yeah.
But if they're getting close to the line of scrimmage, if you're the least Shanahan should have done is call a timeout. Even if he decides not to challenge, you kind of just gather yourself there at that point of the game. But yeah, that's huge. Philly's been the recipient of some questionable coaching calls on the first drive against both opponents in the playoffs. It's Dable going for it on 4th and 8. And pretty much that set the tone for that game. And the play by Devonta Smith in this game, and it shouldn't have counted. The Eagles should have turned it over on downs in their first drive. That set the tone for that game.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think the 49ers staff, that's you just mentioned it, Mike. I was going to say that's a 4th down play. So you've got to look at that. And the importance of that particular play, if that gets overturned, you're getting the ball back near midfield in a scoreless game in the
where
first
you
quarter.
still have your starting quarterback.
Yeah, where you still have your starting quarterback, right? We didn't know how the rest of that, it ended up being a disaster with, we'll get into that. And backup quarterbacks, Jesus Christ, that was a sad display. But and then secondly, what was interesting is, we saw, we know the Eagles were, and every team does that, right? When it's kind of a questionable, catch, no catch, running up to the line of scrimmage. So they did their part. Yeah. But what was interesting is that we didn't get that reverse angle replay on the national home audience until after everything was kind of, the dust had settled, right? We didn't, and we know the play happened quick, so the Eagles rushed up to the line. So, but we didn't. If I remember correctly, I don't think that reverse angle did not get shown to the home audience until after it was 7-0.
Yeah, after the commercial. Yeah. And keep in mind, that was Fox's only game this weekend. So they have a ton of cameras in that stadium. Mm-hmm. And to Mike's point earlier, one of my biggest questions here is we see this expedited review. And I was going to bring it up a little bit later, but it's pertinent now. The expedited review seems good in principle, but the way it's used is so inconsistent. It's like they use it sometimes, other times they decide not to. Mm-hmm. So why are we using it in certain cases and not overturning something that critical on a play that's a touch, basically hands the Eagles a touchdown versus turning the ball over?
Yeah, that's the word for the expedited review. I love it. I've loved it when it's been deployed. I think it's a great thing, but you've got to get it on play. It has to catch that play. That's apparently exactly what it's for.
Yeah.
And the other point of that is, and this isn't just a reaction to that play. It's just an extension of an existing rule that just makes sense. And maybe in some ways it is a reaction because it brings it to your attention. But if we automatically review turnovers and scoring plays, shouldn't we automatically review 4th down plays?
Why not?
It was a good point because our Jet fan Novak texted us during that play, and he said, if that was incomplete, would that be reviewable since it's a turnover on downs? Now, I don't know if a turnover on downs is considered a turnover.
Yeah.
That's a clarification I'd like to know. But that was a great question, I thought, on his part, because if that's incomplete, but he actually caught it, would they review it automatically and then possibly overturn it?
Yeah, or if you're the 49ers, do you rush your team out there?
Right.
Try to take a snap before it happens. Yeah.
A little different because you got the change of offensive and defensive units there. But Novak did pose a great question because I wasn't thinking about that at the time, of that non-review. But I don't know, guys. There's too many inconsistencies right now with replay challenges, coaches challenges, just calls, no calls. I didn't know where to begin with it. It's been a hot topic, and it's going to remain a hot topic, obviously, until until the Super Bowl, a week from Sunday, and then in the offseason, I think it's going to be a big, I think, review by the entire NFL in terms of what they need to do with this officiating crews.
I'll put something out there. Do you think that Shanahan comes up small in big games now that he's got a body of work to look at? I mean, he was the offensive coordinator during that Atlanta Super Bowl where they choked away the lead. He's had a couple of leads in games in the Super Bowl he's had one as a Super Bowl for the 49ers. And then not challenging that call. Do you think this is a trend, or is this just a small sample size for him?
I don't know. I mean, but this particular play, I think that's one where you need, coordinators or other, coaching, staff members to kind of maybe point that out as well to kind of help that decision there. But the game as a whole, Scott, I would say, no. I mean, the Eagles were they're the favorite. They're the 1 seed. They were at home. So San Francisco it wasn't expecting to be a blowout, but again, Philadelphia looked like the better team on the field like they did last week. So I know we'll get into that in terms of what we think is going to happen in the Super Bowl, but Philadelphia just looks freaking good, man. I think the game was more about Philly than it was about San Francisco for sure. Of course, they had Josh Johnson running around and all the other stuff. But
yeah, that's
ridiculous.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fair question in his career. I think that's a fair question. But to Cardone's point, I think it's kind of piling on to add this game or this call to that because, as he said, they were helpless. They were, that was a seal getting attacked by a polar bear. It just wasn't fair. I don't think you can add this to his legacy, but I think it's a fair question overall. I do. He's had, obviously a talented coach, obviously a guy who can get his guys to play when he needs to, but hasn't been able to kind of crest the hill.
Well, yeah. For years that was the knock against Andy Reid, and then Andy Reid finally did when he had Mahomes. And give the 49ers a good quarterback, and they might very well go on a run. It's not going to be Tom Brady who announces retirement today again. So.
I think that's part of my pet peeve segment is just, yeah.
I'll leave it out then. I just thought I'd mention that today is
Brady.
We're recording this on Wednesday, and Brady opened up this morning with retiring, which basically set everyone into a tizzy and talking about his retirement for the rest of the day. But so the Philly game, does pose an interesting question about that catch standing. So it wasn't a turnover on downs. So if it's a turnover on downs, does Purdy get hurt? Does that game take on a whole new? There's a whole other what ifs that happen.
I mean, there's a whole other universe right now where the 49ers are in the Super Bowl because of that play. I don't. But that's obviously I'm using hyperbole there, but I mean that game could be entirely different, guys. If Purdy's not in that exact situation he was in and that freak kind of hitting his elbow, that doesn't happen. Yeah. I think this game is a down to the wire game. This was another one. I'm not really sure Jalen Hurts is anywhere near 100% right now. And that's why I think I texted you guys during the game is there was so many called runs and they did their jackass quarterback sneak in this game. And I'm like, what are they doing? Like you can tell he's at least ginger about it. Yep. It's not, maybe it's fine. Maybe doctors have x-rayed it and said, look, you're not going to hurt it anymore. It's all about how much pain he can take. Maybe that's the case, but still, what the hell are you doing in a game like that where the third string quarterback is already down and the fourth stringer's in there. And even after the next options like McCaffrey after that, and they have Jalen Hurts in there, and not just that they have him in there, which is fine. I kind of shy away from saying you should pull players, but you don't have to call cold quarterback runs. Give the ball to Miles Sanders and Boston Scott 100 times. They're not losing that game. Yeah. I didn't get it. I really didn't get that part of that game at all.
Yeah. Well, and when the game was anywhere close to being, up in the air, 50-50, 50-50 chance, 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 50 We saw a lot of flags coming in from John Hussey's crew. One that got me in particular, I think it was 21-7 at the time, and it was the punt that 49ers forced a punt, but they were called for roughing the punter.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a 5-yard running into the punter.
Yeah.
It was a full-blown 15-yarder, and the guy was full-on shoved into the punter, which we know as Giant fans, we've seen that flag picked up or not even thrown.
Yep.
And the ref will come out and go, the defender was pushed into the punter.
Yeah, defiantly. The Giants will be screaming. They'll be like going, "What? Our punter's on the ground. What the hell?" And the ref will be like, "No, pushed into him." Like
unsportsmanlike conduct. The Giant bench.
Yeah, we've seen
For barking at the official.
Yeah, the official like defiantly.
There were a couple strange incidents there. That was that punt, and then there was one where the 49ers made a third down stop on a pass to A.J. Brown. And of course, the pass is right off the line of scrimmage. So the defender is playing bump and run coverage with A.J. Brown, and they call him for pass interference on a ball that he basically broke up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had bad days, man.
So many questionable calls. But Mike, I wanted to bring up a point that you or comment on the point you made about Hurts, with design runs. I didn't realize. I'm looking at the box score. He had 11 carries. Hurts.
Yeah, he was.
And those were a lot of them were by design. So is that because his throwing shoulder is not at 100%? I perhaps not sure. I don't know, but it didn't. The passing game certainly didn't look like it wasn't lighting anybody on fire. I mean, other than the Devontae Smith non-catch, he only had one more catch the rest of the game for 7 yards. Hurts on the day had 121 yards. So I was just pissed off, wanting to see a good game, wanting to see, just like you said, a game come down to the wire. It's a championship game. Our team was blown out the week before, so let's at least see. The Eagles have to really earn this victory. I had a feeling that, I think we all predicted they were going to win. Most people had the Eagles winning, but man, make them earn that win. And, with Purdy going down, and I think it was with Josh Johnson. And what do you expect from him, right? I mean, he's not going to come in off the bench and in a championship game and do any damage. But for God's sakes, do you have to fucking fumble the snap, on that one play?
Yeah.
I think it was 14-7 at that time, if I'm not mistaken. Was it 14-7 on the fumble?
I think it was 14-7, and not only fumble the snap, but not even grab it.
Well, then he pulled a Cam Newton. I was
I'm not getting there.
Yeah, balls fumbling around. It's a championship game, and there's Josh Johnson just kind of like casually, sort of like just waving at a loose ball on the ground. I was calling him Cam for the rest of the game after that move.
That was such a Giant thing to happen. You sniffed that right out, Cardone. That was awesome. It's like when you bring in a backup quarterback, part of you goes, okay, maybe this guy could do something. Maybe he's been on this roster this long for a reason. But of course, no, if it's the Giants, they're going to come in, they're going to fumble a snap. They're going to fall right into the role of bad backup quarterback. And, it's just such a predictable outcome that he
ends up getting hurt. It's amazing too with these third string quarterbacks how these guys come in for like 13 snaps and then they can't finish a game. It's incredible.
Yeah. Don't you like that Dexter Lawrence can throw Kirk Cousins to the ground? He gets a personal foul, but Ndamukong Suh could just lay on Josh Johnson with his full body weight. There's no flag on that. He gets concussed. They immediately see that he's concussed and tell him to get to the blue tent.
Yeah. Yeah, when like Jalen Hurts gets hit in the head, and like word from the Eagles bench, he's got a sore ankle. That's why he stumbled coming off the field.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine. Yeah, Scott mentioned Hussey. I wanted to get this in while we're talking about it. So I don't remember if this made the pod last week or if I missed this information by a day or so, but So I'm not sure if I mentioned that Clete Blakeman, who officiated the Giants and Eagles game, is 13-1. The Eagles are 13-1 in Clete Blakeman's career when he officiates an Eagles game. Now, the Eagles have been fairly good recently, but 13-1, that's a little off. So to up the ante one for the next week, the NFL assigns John Hussey to the Eagle game. So he doesn't quite have the overall record with the Eagles that Clete did, but Hussey is when he officiates the Eagles games, The Eagles are 6-0 on the money line and 6-0 against the spread. So basically, you could bet on the Eagles when John Hussey is officiating that game. So
I love the handicapping here.
Two playoff games at home, and the Eagles, coincidentally, I'm sure, get the two most Eagle-friendly officials in the league doing those two games. I'm sure that was just a coincidence. Nothing to see here. Move along.
My question is, John Hussey is a terrible referee in the regular season.
Terrible.
How the hell does this guy get a berth in the NFC Championship game?
No, there's always something when this guy does a game where he's lost control. He looks like maniacal Michael Scott out there, just kind of like, no, hang on. I got to talk to these guys, and I got to go over to each coach. I don't know what's happening. I mean, he's the king of that.
What's the playoff criteria anymore for these officials? I thought you had to have a pretty clean resume. You know, who knows what that is, right? That's not knowledge for the general public.
Mike and I were talking about this before we came on the air, and really the NFL does historically reward those crews that throw more flags on average than those that don't. And case in point, Carl Cheffers is going to be the head official for the Super Bowl. His crew threw the most flags this year in the NFL and the most defensive pass interference calls.
Very interesting. See how that plays out.
We'll see how that plays out.
And we talked about this last year too. If you remember, they gave one of the females the line judge spot in the Super Bowl. And it was about 2 to 3 years earlier than most officials do get that position. And you can't tell me it was just on merit alone, because there's a number of times that we've seen her screw up. So, you know, the NFL has a certain formula that basically can just put anyone in any game.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a formula to it. I think it's these guys are the brown nosers. These guys are the guys. Yeah, you know that.
Here's an interesting stat I want to point out. Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. Not that again, the Eagles won this game handily, but you know, for several reasons. But when I'm looking at the first down statistics, and they had 25 to San Francisco's 11. Guess how many first downs the Eagles earned from penalties?
I know this question because that's the most in the NFL this season. 7 penalties. 7 first
Can
downs.
You
by
imagine?
penalties.
A game where we're watching the New York Football Giants get 7 first downs on, from penalties. That's fucking unheard of.
No,
I was going to bring
this
this up.
That's an entire season for the Giants to get 7.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up because it's the most in the NFL this season, and it happened in the NFC Championship game.
That's insane.
That shouldn't happen. I want to go back because I feel like people might think we're saying something that we're not saying here. The Eagles win that game in those circumstances 101 times out of 100. Nobody here is saying the officials decided the outcome of that game.
Correct.
I don't think. I mean, now I will say, as going back to the beginning, the game could have been totally different and anyone could have won, but that's not on the officials. That's on not getting that replay out there. That was easy to miss, that catch. I don't blame the officials in full speed for missing that. But so that I want to make sure that people understand that. All I'm doing is bitching about the Eagles, and all this, by the way, I'm going to rehash a little bit in my pet peeve because we're dancing dangerously around my pet peeve right now.
Yeah, and I know what his pet peeve's going to be. I almost was going to call you out on it. Now I won't because I know what it's going to be. There was a tweet that came out after the Chiefs game that basically said, look, the last call on Mahomes was a legitimate call, but we've seen way too much of the officials in these two games. And that's the point I think we're trying to make. The Eagles were going to win, like Mike said. I mean, you have Josh Johnson in there, and then you bring a Brock Purdy back on with a torn UCL, which you didn't know at the time, but he wasn't going to throw the ball more than 4 yards downfield. So you basically don't have a quarterback behind center for half that game, and the Eagles were going to win. But why did we have to have so much impact from the officiating crew inserting themselves? I think that was the question that we're going to bring up. We're going to bring it up again when we talk about the next game too.
All up and down the field in both games. It's funny, when we send out the invite to meet to do this podcast, we we traditionally will give it a little short title. And I hosted this week, and my title is Refs Dominate Championship Week. And that's just what it felt like.
Yes.
I mean, the refs had the best weekend out of anybody. They certainly had more screen time. They dominated the shows.
And you guys don't usually have any knowledge of what I'm using as the intro, so that fit in with the intro perfectly without you knowing.
Yeah, we don't know the intros until 5 minutes until we go on.
Yeah.
2 minutes until we go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, trivia question. Go ahead.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Trivia question for you guys. What number was Josh Johnson on the Giants?
Ooh. Let me think. For some reason, I want to say 17, but that doesn't sound right.
7 is ringing in my head.
8.
8. Oh,
hey, Danny Dimes.
Danny Dimes. Yeah, Danny Dimes wears it a lot better.
What was Geno Smith? Was he 7 for us?
I don't remember Geno Smith, and I don't remember Josh Freeman, who had a cup of coffee with us as well.
Yeah, Geno. Oh shit, what was he? He was a single digit. I think. Was he?
I thought he was 4, but I could be
3?
wrong.
Geno might have been 3. Yeah,
I think he might have been.
Right.
I think he was 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a Cardone knows.
I know.
He knows the jersey
Fictional
numbers
characters.
from Ampipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Georgievich and Salvucci, but I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
I could give you the starting lineup for the White Shadow is Salami and Coolidge and Thorpe and
God.
Coolidge.
Yeah.
Coolidge.
The
Jefferson.
Thorpe and Salami look like they didn't even belong on a basketball court.
Nah, get the hell out.
Salami.
They also didn't belong in high school. They were 38 years old.
Yeah. How did these guys lose games?
Right.
You know what bothered me a little bit in the Eagles game is if you look at now what Fox is left with from an announcing crew, their number one crew is this guy Joe Davis and Greg Olson.
Yeah.
And no, Kevin Burkhardt. It was Kevin Burkhardt and Joe and Greg Olson. And Burkhardt, for some reason, he thought he was watching like a Madden game. I don't know how many times he used the phrase activate. Well, the Eagles have activated the run game on this drive. Well, the 49ers, they really need to activate Deebo Samuel in the passing game. No, you don't activate players. You call a play and you get the ball to them. This is not activating them. They're not like robots sitting in like sleep mode where you push a button and they all of a sudden start.
I mean, he said it so many times. It reeked of him trying to start a new thing. You know what I mean? Like, my wife's critique of our last podcast was like, why don't you say salty again, hon? Why don't you say salty one more time? I'm like, I was trying to make it a thing. And she's like, yeah.
I love salty. Yeah.
It's better to say you're fucking pissed off. You know,
Yeah,
that's
right.
salty.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you could put it into one nice word. Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Scott. That it just as many times he said it, it just started to be like the first time he said it just goes right over your head, right? Whatever. Then like the fourth time, you're like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, guy's making up his own calls. Yeah, he's making up his own calls. He's just seeing things that no one else is seeing. I don't know.
Kenneth Gainwell is getting activated on this drive. No, he's spelling Sanders for arrest.
If you want to activate, yeah, I like spelling.
Spelling's
Yeah,
good.
it's clear. He's trying to bring activate into the vernacular. This, he has no more games. Who's doing the Super Bowl? Is it Olsen and this guy?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see how hard he.
It's
Fox has the
right?
Super Bowl, so it's going
Fox
to be
has the
Olsen and
Super Bowl.
Burkhardt.
So yeah, maybe he'll.
Gosh.
Maybe that's what he was doing last week. He was warming it up. He's like, I'm going to take it to the nation next week. I'm getting ready, baby.
Hello, friends. Speaking of which, us being in the Charlotte area, I have to mention the loss of Billy Packer. He's not a football guy, basketball guy, but I listened for years. His son, Mark Packer, had he was on the airwaves here for sports radio for much of when I first moved down here, and I used to call into the radio show quite a bit. I didn't even talk about the Giants.
I called into that show once.
The Weiner
I called about the Charlotte 49ers for some reason. I was during around March Madness. Yeah. I actually met him. I say met him, but Mark Packer was broadcasting his show. I'm trying to remember the sports bar I was at. I want to. It doesn't matter.
Didn't
but
they hang out at Jackson Jill's a lot from that?
They were at
yeah,
Jackson
you know what?
Jill's.
Thank you, Mike. It was Jackson
Yeah.
Jill's, and yeah, I think I knew he was going to be there, so he popped in and just we're chatting with him for a little bit. And he was again in between breaks or whatever, and he was just a cool guy, just kind of hanging out with fans and listeners there. So that was kind of cool to meet him.
Guys, no one outside of our realm of Charlotte's going to understand this reference, but they tore the scoreboard down today.
Oh, did they really?
They did. They're putting a used car lot in that place.
What?
The scoreboard was an iconic sports bar that had like stadium style seating. You could dial in your own audio for the TV you were watching.
Whatever
That's
TV
right.
you wanted to watch. You a little speaker on your table. You could set your speaker to that TV. I mean, that place was epic when I first moved here. I might have moved back to Binghamton sooner had the scoreboard not been there. Scoreboard was also the site of one of Scott's greatest moments. Well, actually, several of Scott's greatest moments happened at the scoreboard.
We'll give a brief synopsis of one of them. So I was reenacting. We're all Knick fans here. I was reenacting the Charles Smith going up, getting fouled but not getting called for. And as I'm going up like the third time, the lady behind me has the platter of 100 chicken wings, and I basically shove them up in the air, tumble them all over. Some of them went on me. I had sauce on my pants. And unfortunately, who the server was, it was like her first night serving.
That's incredible.
She just dropped the platter, went to the back, and just started bawling. I think she left.
Yeah, it was
no way.
She was trying to help clean it up, and she was bawling, and she's like, "It's my first day. It's my first day." Oh God.
And you got Scott barking at her, probably like, "I'm reenacting Charles Smith, who couldn't put a layup in. He's 6'10", cost us a Eastern Conference championship against the Chicago Bulls in '93." Most heartbreaking loss.
I looked at it like he was hacked 5 different times and never got the call.
Yeah. And then the waitress comes in and hacks him. Just to add to the. There was another good one there where we were there one night, and there was a guy 2 seats down from Scott. So there's Scott. I'm on his right. There's a guy 2 seats down on Scott's left who looks, I mean, just identical to Kenny Loggins. If it could have been Kenny Loggins. And Scott and I have been there a while. This might have been later the same night for all I know, but Scott kind of leans over to me, and like when a drunk guy thinks he's whispering but he's not. So Scott's like, "Holy shit, he looks like Kenny Loggins." And so I turn and look at Scott, and Kenny Loggins is looking at Scott from the other side. Scott says it like 4 times, and then the guy finally goes, "I know I look like Kenny Loggins."
I think that's the same night the bartender disappeared for a while, and I tried to climb over the bar and grab a couple beers.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, always a favorite. Always a favorite of the bar staff. I don't know what they hate worse: people climbing over and stealing beers, or people asking what the specials are.
You know what's funny is I have no idea what
depends on where you go.
Like. So I could pick Kenny Loggins out of a lineup. I have no idea what Messina looks like, and you never hear from Messina anymore. Did people know there was a Loggins in Messina?
I cannot picture it in my head.
I do.
You know what I picture? Messina is like Kenny Loggins, but with a goatee instead of a full beard.
I remember a Mike Messina on a pitcher for
Yankees.
the Orioles and the Yankees. Yeah, I remember him.
And I don't think that's the same guy.
Might have been. So Scott, of the 100 wings, how many remained? Was there were any left on the platter, or all 100 were just airborne?
Fully did a 360. Everything went down. Like there might have been a random wing that landed on the table. Like all of them were just all over the floor. They had to bring out the cleanup crew with the big mop and everything else.
Yeah, there wasn't a single survivor.
Carrots, celery.
Yeah.
Ranch, blue cheese, you name every
the little red and white trays that they separate into 10 wing pieces. All of those were strewn about. She might have had a couple beers on that tray too, but I
tell you, that Charles Smith non-layup, I got into a bar fight over that play. I was vacationing. I was vacationing with a bunch of guys, a bunch of buddies from Jersey. We were down there on a golf trip. We were in Hilton Head Island. And what's ironic, a couple things. The name of the establishment shares the same exact name of our favorite establishment that we go to watch the Giants.
Oh,
yes.
all right.
Yes. There's one of those. Probably not the same, it has nothing to do with each other, but and the same thing. Charles Smith was doing, his thing, whatever, getting hacked, and we knew our season was over. We had some Bull fans at the table next to us. Next thing you know what happens, guys, right? Everything, you just lose. You come out of your skull, right?
Yeah.
And that was it. I don't even remember. My buddy Dell had to tell me. He's like, Cardone. He's like, you were flipping tables. Same thing. French fries were going all over the place. Beers, everything. Guy was barking at me from across the table. I'm like, yeah, you couldn't just celebrate with your buddies over there. You had to
had to do this now.
You had to launch an insult over to us. He's like, oh, I don't hear dick from that table. I'm like, you had to do it. There it is. We didn't say a word to each other for the entire game, and then all of a sudden that gets trotted out. The second the buzzer sounding at the Garden that night. What an awful. Still remember
it. It could have gone that way. Remember when we were chanting Saquon Barkley, and then and then the Giants got a little trouble after that, and the guys at the table behind us were going, "Where's Saquon now?" Had to do it.
Had to do it.
Luckily, the Giants ended up winning that. Hey, so now we have. Wait a minute here. We have a White Shadow reference.
Yes.
And we have a Chicago Bulls reference. So the trivia question I'm going to ask is that the White Shadow. The reason he was coaching high school basketball is because he played NBA for the Bulls. If you remember the opening, he's going up for a layup and he gets undercut and he, falls on the ground. And the worst possible reenactment of an NBA play that anyone could ever imagine. So the trivia question there is, what number was he for the Bulls? What was his name? Ken
Howard.
Ken Howard.
I have no idea what number he was.
I think that sounds
like a 50.
Yes, I was going to say like 50, like 54. For some reason, I see 54.
He was 14.
14.
Yeah, I just always remember that because I love that show. 14 is my favorite number, so that always stuck with me.
We had the 4 right. That's close.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate to our audience that we do not script these shows.
No, not even close.
As you can tell from the last 10 minutes.
Was there another football game?
Yeah. No, there's an AFC also.
No.
Well, what's funny is that AFC game was a really good game to watch. It was a fun game to watch, and I felt like that fourth quarter, the fun factor went away, and it became the referee show. We talked in the opening about the do-over play. I think Mike wanted to say some more things about that, so I'll turn it over to him there. But I'll leave you with this one thing though. Mahomes, damn impressive that he showed up, played on that ankle, and was able to be effective. I really thought he was going to I didn't think he was going to play. And if he did play, I thought, well, he's going to be so limited that they'll trot him out there for a short appearance and then they'll bring Henny in or something.
Yeah, I will. I'll talk about the do-over play. But first of all, it was Ken Reeves.
Oh, okay. Ken Reeves.
Right. Sorry.
It wasn't Ken Howard?
No, Ken Reeves.
Wait.
After we were
the actual
talking,
actor is Ken Howard, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yes,
I only know him as Ken Reeves.
Yeah.
So while we were talking, I brought up the opening here on YouTube, and clear. It says Reeves on his back, 14. He's down there holding his knee.
I think the actor was Ken Howard.
That he went to Carver High School and dominated. But no,
Carver.
So the famous do-over play. So what a shit show, obviously. And to Scott's point, as we started talking about at the beginning, I think that's a good point. Why? If you remember the play before that, they were trying to get something right with the clock before they even snapped that one, right? And then this play sort of happens, and you don't see any of the telltale signs of a play blown dead. You don't see the official hands over his head. You don't see like half the offensive line like looking around and not playing. You don't see any of that. It looked like a normal NFL play. So I think the do-over play, I have a lot of problems with that because I agree. There's a lot of other ways to handle that, in my opinion, but it's not even what pisses me off the most about that sequence. On the initial do-over play, the 49ers, or I'm sorry, the
Bengals.
The Bengals make the world right and make the do-over play not count by sacking Mahomes on that play. And we get a defensive holding call on 5th down that basically extends that drive.
Yeah.
That's what pisses me off. If you're the officials and you lost track of that clock and you fucked up and you've essentially given the other team 5 downs because of that, I would think my biggest fear would be, oh God, please don't get a first down on this play. Please don't get a first down on this play. Not only were they not thinking that way, they awarded them a first down on a bullshit call. I can't wrap my head around where these officials are during this game and their complete lack of game situation. I don't, if I'm Torbort there, before I snap the ball again, I'm looking over at the other officials. I'm like, no flags, no flag. You can't throw a flag on this down. So out of the crazy 5 downs that they got, which is just exposes these officials. They're incompetent. They lose control of games. All of that is true, but they made a bad situation worse on the next play by allowing the Bengals or the I can't remember who played in the games, by allowing Kansas City to extend that drive.
Yeah. Well, you made a good point, Mike. That there were no whistles, and even on the video where they show the guy running in, he's not waving his arms like this, blowing the play dead. He's just running in. It's almost like he's trying to tell someone, "Hey guys, we screwed up." But if you don't blow the whistle, people don't stop playing.
Yeah.
And if you don't signal to the other referees that that this play has to stop, no one's going to stop playing. So it should have been a legitimate play that just kept going on. It sets a bad precedent because, again, they wiped a legitimate play off the books and basically did a do-over.
Yeah, well, everything's based on the whistle, right? There are penalties, there are turnovers, there are things that even though they know you made a play and your team recovered the ball, you can't have the ball because we blew the whistle. And the whistle is the final arbiter of everything. Yeah. So if we blew the whistle, the play is dead, that recovery doesn't count. But in this case, to say there's a whistle's bullshit. There was no whistle. What Scott said is right. The referee was running in, not thinking they were about to snap the ball. He just wants to get someone's attention to say the clock's not running again, but he doesn't blow his whistle. So the play goes on as a normal play. I don't know. I do appreciate them getting together and trying to keep clock integrity. I get what they were doing, but you just got to think for 1 minute about the impact of that and the magnitude of this game and what that's going to look like. And like I said, after you decide, you know what, I don't care that it's going to look bad. My job is the clock, and the clock is wrong. And the only way to get this right is to replay that down. Even if you make that decision, you cannot throw a gift first down flag on 5th down.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, guys. Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. And just couldn't believe. I mean, you guys made every point that I was just listening along to your comments here and just agreeing because you covered everything on that play. You really did. The only thing that I was going to add again was I always look at these games. Imagine if this was the Giants, because we're the three angry Giant fans. I got to throw that in there, just like, and I always, because I just want to see the game called correctly. There was a great game. I kind of found myself rooting a little bit towards Cincinnati, but I really didn't care if Kansas City won that game either. But you just hate to see it determined either way, shape, or form if the officials have any overriding impact on it. And I kind of had that feeling all the way until the last drive.
Zach Taylor wanted to explode, and how many times he literally mouths to the refs, "What the fuck?" I mean, he's doing this over and over again. Like, guy, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah. Now, just in case anyone wants to know, Zach Taylor's face in that situation looks like the face of someone being prison raped. That was what that would look like.
It's true.
What's happening? What's happening to me right now? Stop it.
Now, I don't have the final penalty numbers in front of me. I do know that the Chiefs had quite a bit of an advantage over the Bengals, but one thing that stood out is the Bengals have a much better receiving crew than the Chiefs do. You have Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins, you have Boyd, you have Hurst, you have all these guys out there. they drew one penalty in the defensive secondary against the Chiefs, and it was the one that was the blatant hit on Hurst before the ball got there, which the Chiefs were like, wait, why is this a call? Meanwhile, Cincinnati was called for 5 defensive penalties by their backs on the Kansas City receivers.
I mean, again, I think we've all agreed here. No one, I mean, and I know NFL rigged was trending right after these games. I don't mean to ever imply these games are rigged. Usually when I do it, it's with tongue in cheek, but things like that are really difficult to explain. I just think that it's a massive incompetence that sometimes is so bad that it looks like the fix is in. I guess that's really where my heart is on this.
Well, the penalties for the game, guys. Cincinnati, 9 penalties for 71 yards. Kansas City, 4 for 55. So more than double the amount of penalties taken, by Cincinnati. There was a couple other ones that we've yet to mention. The what looked like or could have been the non-roughing the quarterback on Burrow late in the game, where I think it was the linebacker. I can't remember the linebacker's name. If you guys know it, help me out. But he took not 2, it looked like 3 steps towards Burrow. Didn't hit him hard, but it was extremely late, and it hit him hard enough for Burrow to go down to the ground. Now, all right, that one I was sort of like on the fence, like let it go. But then we all saw the one, and you had to call the one with Mahomes at the on the last drive to set up the game-winning field goal. So because that was definitely, there was no question he was out of bounds, and he explained, he's like, I was trying to get there sooner to knock him out. He was trying to get him to go backwards. At least that was his explanation at the time. But whatever the case, but on that drive or on that play, we saw at least I think it was a couple networks were highlighting. They circled the left tackle apparently holding. The Bengal, blatantly holding. No call there. That should have been maybe offsetting, should it not? So, guys, I don't know. It does, Mike. I think we're not outwardly saying game's rigged. The referees are that biased. No, but it does. There's lots of head scratchers when one team, when you can see, game impacting penalties on one team versus the other, and it determines the outcome.
Here's the other thing too. Torbort's crew, they threw a few flags on kickoffs or punts, changing field position. But on that last punt return that put the Chiefs in position, there were 2, not just 1, but 2 blatant blocks in the back, right at the point of attack. That allowed him to get the edge. And of course, no flags thrown. And what happens? They get up to midfield on that.
Yeah. That game, I mean, like we've covered here, the whole weekend carries a stench with it now, and it's unfortunate. And again, I'm treading on a pet peeve here a little bit. Like, it's unfortunate that, like Scott opened with, this was a good game, and here's what we're talking about. Now, a lot of people would go, but that's always what you guys talk about. But
because it's always happening.
I mean, if you go back to that Chiefs-Bills game last year, or you go back to Wild Card Weekend, Super Wild Card Weekend, we talked about how letting the players play the games or letting players decide things, it results in a really good game to watch. The flow's there; they're not stopping every time. And in this game and in the Philly game, there were so many penalty flags that the flow is completely just destroyed.
Yeah. I remember those shows around Super Wild Card Weekend last year. And I think it was like 5 out of the 6 games on Super Wild Card Weekend were just amazing games. And the big thing about officiating we talked about last year was that, the point is to help the offense and that they want scoring. That's why there's all these defensive fouls. Well, those games, I remember every one of them was like 34-40. And it just proved, just let these guys play. These offenses are talented enough that they can score, especially with the rules they're given to play under. You don't need to consistently throw flags and extend downs. I don't get the third down penalties. I never will. You can never explain it to me in a way that makes sense. Defense is part of this game too, and good defense is part of the game. And it's like they're trying to eliminate it. I
just still don't understand as old school fans like we are, is a is a 17-14 game that much less exciting than a 45, 42 game? I like the idea of being able to fucking stop somebody occasionally on certain drives instead of the old, like, whoever has the ball last. We say it all the time, like, you left too much time on the clock. There's 13 seconds. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
In some cases that has been the case. So I don't understand. Is the NFL so concerned, obsessed, paranoid about losing fans if the scores are, if we have games in the teens versus in the 30s? It's bullshit. Don't we have stars on defense as well?
It really reminds, that's awesome, Chris. That's really good. And it reminds me of the trap that NASCAR fell into. Kind of the same deal. They got concerned about losing fans because there's the same group of guys at the top all the time, and they completely changed it to even the playing field, which is always results in a bad idea in real life and in sports. It's always never works. But now their fandom is the lowest it's ever been, and it could happen to the NFL too. Although NFL's kind of plays on a different playing field than any other sport. I don't think they ever have to worry about losing fans. But
no,
$18
billion a year.
Yeah. And that's another point. If you want to talk about money, it's inconceivable that the officiating in this league should be that bad. Money is not an object to fix it.
Yeah.
No. It's not. You can do anything you can dream up, any bizarre technology with radio chips at both ends of the football, or anything you can come up with, they could implement. They have more money than God. I mean, that can't be an excuse. Is it really got to be? They can't be worried about preserving the integrity of the game. Shit, they started blowing that up 5 years ago. So
guys, all we have to do is go back and look at some of the Super Bowls that have been really good Super Bowls. Look at our first Super Bowl against the Patriots. Those were not high-scoring games.
Yeah,
they were
17-14.
Yeah, they were good, hard-fought games. It's not like people go, that game sucked. There wasn't enough scoring. Maybe Tom Brady thought that because he guaranteed that. What, 7? We're not going to score 17.
Is Plax playing defense?
Which I think he did on that last play.
That's ironic. Yeah, that's true. I never thought about that. He was on the field for the Hail Mary.
So, any last thoughts on that Chiefs-Bengal game? I will say this. I got to give both those teams a lot of credit. Like I mentioned earlier about Mahomes, very impressive in playing with injury. Joe Burrow's now made 2 championship games, won one of them last year, probably could have won this one this year. And the Bengals on the surface don't look like a great team, but the results speak for themselves.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris. I've been hogging the mic tonight a little bit.
No, I wanted to. My last comment was going to be, and Scott, just mentioned it. Is Patrick Mahomes? Well, both these quarterbacks, right, and both these teams. But Patrick Mahomes, this guy, I thought the same thing. I was thinking that he really would just be so limited in this game, where he wasn't going to be very mobile. You just didn't know even how effective he would be just pushing off that injured ankle. So I don't know what the hell how injured he really is, or what the staff did this week to get him prepared. But the guy just played amazing, and my hat goes off to Mahomes again, because, and I like the guy. I do. I like both. I like Burrow. I like Mahomes. I like these 2 organizations really. And so if these 2 teams are going to be around for a while, I think as long as these 2 guys are playing quarterback for these 2 franchises, they're going to be good for a while. They really are.
By the way, on the play early in the game with Kadarius Toney, where he scored, it looked like he scored a touchdown, was that not expedited review that came in and said he didn't catch it? They didn't actually challenge that, did they?
I don't think anyone actually challenged that.
I don't know if I remember. Yeah, I don't think
so.
They
called it a touchdown at first, or a completion. And then I think they said, after further review, we've decided it's incomplete.
Yeah.
And it was almost identical to the play.
You're right, because I think that's the one where after they came out, they said, after discussion, incomplete pass. And the announcer of the game was like, what he means by after discussion was expedited review. Like New York called and said, that's incomplete.
Yeah. I love how they say, here's another little thing, like after discussion, incomplete pass. Like No, assholes. Like, the pass was incomplete. It's not because of your discussion that the pass became incomplete.
We've decided.
It should be like, after discussion, we realized we fucked up, made the wrong call. It was an incomplete pass the whole time. It's not like it was complete and then it became incomplete. It already was incomplete. We just fucking missed it. Right. That's what they should say.
The idiot on our crew who came running in doing this. Saw nothing. Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like after like a spot foul or something, or like after discussion, the runner did get the the gain of yardage. Real like, well, no, like he had it. You missed it.
Yeah. He always had it. It's not like he got it since. He didn't get it since then.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, he had it to start with.
Since we've been talking about it, we just decided we decided we're going to give it to him. So he didn't.
Dude.
Yeah. Right.
Well, what was interesting to me is that play that Juju Smith-Schuster, or no, it might have been Valdez-Scantling, reached the ball out as he was being tackled and got the first down, and they said it broke the plane of where the first down was. If that ball had gotten swatted out of his hands, would they have said his forward motion was stopped?
Outstanding question.
It looked as much as forward motion being stopped as possible, and then he just reaches the hand out afterwards. I always question that.
I have that play on my list for possible launching point for a pet peeve because isn't that the definition of there is no clear and obvious video evidence?
No.
You can't say from those camera angles they have that ball crossed that plane. Did it look like it did? Yeah, it did look like it, but there's incontrovertible video evidence.
I don't think they use incontrovertible anymore. It's the opinion of the guy under the hood anymore.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is.
Get off of that.
You guys know where I like to go with this one. After they then decide that he got the yardage of gain or whatever the hell they call it, well, then it should be like, well, now we're gonna fucking measure it, because instead of just giving it to him, well, now it's worth a stick. Now it's worth a chain gang measurement.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that.
At least the chains in Kansas City were working properly. For the second week in a row, Philadelphia had a chain problem. What the hell is up with that?
What is up with it? Yeah, exactly.
2 weeks in a row on an opposition drive, too.
Yeah.
It had to be the same chain, did it not? It had the same fucking duct tape on there, didn't it?
I think what happens in Philly is when the other team gets the ball, the chain guy goes down there and he adds 2 links to the chain, and he doesn't have time to shut them down real good. So they yank on those chains and then they break. They're like, oh, the chains are broken. I don't know why. Every opposing team in Philly has to go 10 yards and 2 inches to get a first down.
10 yards and 2 links. Yeah.
I agree with everything you guys said about the game, and you guys nailed the takeaways. And just one other quick point. Again, this is another thing that was going to be a pet peeve. But first of all, Joe Burrow's an absolute stud. And that dude, he can come play for the Giants at any point over any quarterback.
I'll take T. Higgins.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Burrow's an absolute stud. And I think you guys remember I had borderline man crushed on him last year around Super Bowl week. So yeah, he's still, he's awesome. And Mahomes, yes, very gutsy. The thing, and you guys said exactly what I wanted to hear. The penalty on Mahomes going out of bounds, you've got to call it. You have to call it. So there were actually people arguing Twitter, YouTube videos I watched this week, TV, saying, listen, man, I get it. 2 feet out of bounds, this and that. But that's a 22-year-old kid just making an effort play. And with the magnitude of that situation, do you need to call that penalty? I'm like, yes, you have to call that penalty. There's no, I mean, we're not talking about other penalties that we're saying you got to take the game into consideration. If a penalty is blatant and obvious, you have to call it. I mean, I think we all agree with that. When we talk about refs having situational awareness, I'm not saying when they hit a quarterback late out of bounds, but the penalty would give them a chip shot field goal to win the game, that you should keep the flag in your pocket. That's not the kind of thing I mean at all. I say this all the time. We always say it when we're watching games together. Even if you think it's a ticky-tack roughing the passer or whatever, you guys know my catchphrase is, you can't do it. I know it's stupid, but you can't do that.
Can't.
No,
totally agree.
Yeah.
So that was my extra points sort of.
Yeah.
speak on
That call on Mahomes was the correct call. There's a bunch of other calls people
Yeah.
could debate in that
Yeah,
game.
there's a
And it's a
as Cardone
cumulative
mentioned.
effect, you know.
Yeah, as Cardone mentioned, there's another call on that play.
There's an offensive holding on that. Yeah.
Much
on the
like
other
that
side of the field.
Washington Redskin play where Kayvon Thibodeau got poked in the eye on the play
Yeah.
where
Yeah, that's right.
there was supposedly pass interference in the end zone.
Yeah.
So leading up to the Super Bowl, we got a couple of storylines that we do not want to hear. One of them is about the Kelsey brothers, as they're already shoving that down our throat. I've heard more about the Kelsey brothers in the last 3 days than I really want to hear. But we did have some notable news this week on coaching changes. So Sean Payton was named coach of the Arizona Cardinals. D'Amico Ryans was named coach of the Houston Texans. So Kafka.
Wait, you said Peyton with the Cardinals.
No,
you mean
Peyton
Broncos.
with the Broncos.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Broncos.
Did I say the Cardinals?
You said Cardinals, yeah.
So Kafka is the one that's still out there that's a candidate for the Cardinals. We know Frank Reich was hired by the Panthers.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot open for either Wink or Kafka. I guess the two big ones right now are Indy and Arizona.
Yeah.
I think
Indy's still open.
Indy is still open, I believe.
It is.
Until they try to find some way to give it to Jeff Saturday.
That's not going to happen. Wink had at least a second interview there with Indy, right?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
That's
I don't. Yeah. I haven't followed back up on that to see. We're at least some murmurings or some reports from the last interview he had there.
And a big one to me, the Cowboys fired 5 coaches, including mutually decided to part ways with Kellen Moore, who's now the Chargers offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
I found that one to be
up.
interesting because somehow McCarthy is turfing blame onto everyone else but himself.
Sure what it looks like. And if I'm a Dallas fan, my thought is get rid of McCarthy, keep Moore, maybe not, find some way to keep Moore. I don't want to be my head coach, I don't think, but find some way to keep him there. But Kellen Moore, you talk about winning the lottery. He goes, I mean, it's pretty, I would think if he can't win with Dallas, then maybe he's not that good of an offensive coordinator to start with. But, I mean, people are questioning Dak Prescott. Now he goes to Justin Herbert, who for all the world looks like a better quarterback. They have some good receivers there. He's got a back that can do everything. So, he just went from one good situation to another, and he doesn't have to deal with Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones. Sign me up for that. I mean, that's a pretty good jump.
Definitely
be interesting to see Prescott in 2023. I want to see which direction he goes from here, because he didn't have a great end to his season, save for the one playoff game. And he is getting it from every side.
Yeah.
And speaking of Dallas coaches and everything, throwing people under the bus, it wasn't only other coaches. There's been players and coaches who've kind of made comments that you can interpret as, if we had a better quarterback, things might be different. So it'll be interesting to see. I know our resident Cowboy fan hates Dak Prescott.
They're stuck with Dak for a few years, though. They really can't cut him, without incurring a terrible cap hit here.
Yeah. Jerry ain't scared of cap hits.
Yeah, that's right. He just circumvents them.
Yeah. Yeah, the cap next year will mysteriously go up exactly the amount of the cap hit that they're taking for this guy.
Now, we will have history in the Super Bowl. So this will be the first Super Bowl with 2 black QBs starting the game. So you have Hurts and then Mahomes. So that I didn't know that. I
didn't
would
even
have thought that
had
happened,
yeah,
but
I would have
hasn't.
figured by now that it happened. Yeah. Yep. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah, they were talking about that. Skip and Shannon were talking about that. I guess yesterday, making highlight. Yeah. Same thing. I wasn't quite. I wasn't certain. I thought we've kind of had reached that by now, but evidently we hadn't.
Trivia question: first black quarterback to start a Super Bowl.
Doug
Williams. Yeah.
Doug Williams,
Doug
Washington,
Williams.
and Super Bowl 22.
Yes.
So they destroyed the Broncos. Yeah.
Just
Broncos.
an absolute. Did the Broncos lead that 10-0 or something like that, and then lost 54-10?
You think about the AFC back then with the Broncos and the Bills. They just served as the whipping boys for all the NFC powerhouses back then.
How
just
in the
did.
world that streak that continued on into the 90s? I wonder who. I have to look it up who broke that streak. But oh my, what's that? That was going on 20
Was it
years.
Denver? Did Denver
It was.
break it?
I think it was Denver.
Denver
I
over
can tell
Atlanta?
you, it went from the '83 Raiders were the last AFC team. It went from the '83 when the Raiders beat the Redskins, and then '84 started with the Niners, and then they didn't. The AFC didn't win another Super
Till
Bowl
96, wasn't it?
No, because Green Bay beat New England in '96. It was '97. They went from
97.
'83
And it was
to
the
90,
Broncos
the
with
'97
Terrell
Broncos
Davis.
when they beat.
Yeah.
I think they
Atlanta.
beat Atlanta or
It
yeah,
was
or no,
Atlanta,
it was Green
yeah.
Bay. I think the first they won back to back. I think they beat Green Bay first. That was Elway with the helicopter run, and then they beat Atlanta the following year. Yeah.
Oh, I
Yep.
forgot they won back to back.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mike Shanahan, Terrell Davis years there, right?
Terrell Davis. Yep. So I know Mike's got a pet peeve tonight, so we'll start with Mike.
Yeah, I just don't know how. First of all, my first real use of this, how salty we all have been for 2 weeks, and then this past weekend of just officials ruining the weekend. How can we not just be bubbling over with pet peeves? I mean, Lowe. I know Lowe thinks I never have any. I got so many tonight, Lowe. I don't even know what to do with them. I had to mix them into regular conversation. Maybe I should have saved some up, but I'm gonna go with one that I decided on shortly after the Eagles game, and that is, again, this kind of rolls back to something I've talked about a lot this year, and that is how media people and these people who do interviews, they can never say anything negative, right? So that's been sort of this thing. So by any measure, can you think of an easier road to the Super Bowl than the Philadelphia Eagles have had right now? I mean, you mentioned earlier they look good, and they're beating teams by large margins, but I mean, what they just got an overmatched Giants team served up to them on a platter. And then the next week, a pretty good 49ers team, but a mash unit by the end of the first quarter. A team that
got Josh Johnson in a championship game. Yeah,
they're playing a team that can't even field a quarterback. But the media has to be like, oh, this dominant 49er runs invokes memories of the Bears in '85 and the Giants in '86, and these other teams that just smashed their way through the playoffs. And I'm like, slow down. Let's just slow down a little bit here. This team has had, I'd have to think real hard to think of a team that had an easier path through the NFL playoffs. And, the scores have been good. And I think that people are looking at the scores more than the actual games. The Eagles team that crushed the Giants looked like a juggernaut. There's no question about that. But again, the Giants were overmatched physically, emotionally, mentally. They got out coached. I mean, every bad thing that could happen happened, and then some things went in the game against them as well. So yeah, okay, Eagles get that one, but the Eagles did not, to me, look like they were playing A-game football in the NFC Championship game. They looked shaky, and there were several moments where I said, "My goodness, if the Giants could have got them this week, it might have been a different story." But of course, you should be. It's the NFL. If you can't beat a team that doesn't have a legitimate quarterback for 3/4 of the game, then you don't belong, in the playoffs. You don't. But I think both things can be true. So I kind of responded to a Twitter with something like that, and someone jumped back down my throat. The Eagles best team all season, #1 seed. They earned this path, and I'm like, dude, both things can be true. The Eagles are awesome. They, don't get me wrong, they earned the #1 seed. They pounded their way through the playoffs, and they're going to play in the Super Bowl. But it's also true that they had a very easy path in the Super Bowl. I think we could say that. I don't think that diminishes from the Eagles season at all. It's just acknowledging that, they haven't been served up typical NFL playoff fare. for the 2 games that they've played. I think that's fair to say. And it just I hate that every team Scott mentions he's mentioned it at least once every season on the podcast is, every team that does something they have to be the best at it. This is one of the best. They just have to make everything so much bigger than it actually is. And I get they're trying to hype a big game and all that, but let's just pump the brakes here. If I'll tell you what, if the Eagles beat the Chiefs 31-7, I will take down my flag. I promise I will take down my flag. But for now, let's just call it like I'm going to call it like I see it. And the way I see it is great team, easy path. This will be the first difficult game they play.
Yeah. No, it's great synopsis there, Mike, and great capture of what I think the Eagles are doing. So like you said, yeah, they've been, they were great all year, and but in the playoffs, yeah, they just faced a Niner team that was just freaking a ghost of themselves from the last couple months. But that's the way it works sometimes. I feel like I just think like sometimes when it's a team's year, I think I've been saying it for most of the year. I just have a feeling that it's the Eagles' year, and so I just want to see a good Super Bowl. But obviously we'll see. We'll let it play out. But my pet peeve was I knew we were going to talk about the officials a lot tonight, and like I said, we don't script this stuff. We don't even the three of us don't. Sometimes we'll connect, sometimes we don't. Before we like I said record this, which is not till Wednesdays. But so I kind of left the officiating stuff just play out by itself, without highlighting a pet peeve. My peeve really didn't come until today's. I'm doing quote, breaking news of Tom Brady retiring again. We just fucking went through this a year ago. The whole groundhog thing of Brady. But what really, just
exactly a year ago by the way.
Yeah, exactly. A year to the day, right? Wasn't it?
And
I think.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. Right before groundhog.
Yeah. And I swear, I think this chop, like, I just wish he would, like, make this announcement after the Super Bowl, so we don't have to even hear or think or I don't want to see his face. I don't want to see highlights of his career. I don't want to talk about his career. So I think what really burned me today was on PTI. Pardon the interruption. You got those two yahoos talking about, will we ever see another? Will anyone ever match Brady? And they're actually trying to break this down. And when you actually look at Brady's statistics. Just playoff statistics. Forget about what he did in the regular season. The idea that he has 35 postseason victories. Tom Brady himself has 35. You know who's in second place? It's Montana with 16.
Yeah.
So he has 19 more than Joe Montana, and we have to sit here and debate of whether or not someone else can come, match his career. Just go away. Stop. I'm glad you're retiring, but let's not now try to come up. It's like the same thing. Like, is he as good as Jordan, or is we see it in basketball all the time, but that's much more of an individualized sport, but in football, now we have to talk about, and we're never going to get the answer to this stuff. Like,
no.
For someone to match Brady, it's going to have to take like another fucking, like, maybe like it would take Mahomes. I'm just throwing him out there because he's in his third Super Bowl. It's going to take him another 15 years. Are we going to, like, I don't know, like, constantly revisit this all the time now and compare? Why do we have to immediately compare, talk about who's going to match Tom Brady's career? Yeah. Why can't it just be Brady, the guy's best, the GOAT, bullshit, whatever that bullshit is, and just leave it at that? That's it.
And what people don't... Go ahead, Mike. Oh, go ahead.
The funny thing about the guys on PTI debating that is, will we ever see another Brady? You guys won't. You'll be long dead.
Well, they mentioned that. Yeah. Mike, that's funny you brought that up, because they did. Wilbon did say, he's like, well, not in our lifetime. Maybe our sons or grandsons, whatever you said. It was funny. So you hit the nail on the head there. Wilbon was saying, well, yeah, not in my lifetime. I'm obviously won't be around for that. But just the whole Brady. I mean, the guy, we know his career. We went through this. What bothers me, we just went through this last year because the guy, quasi fucking retired, and now we got to do it again.
Yeah. My stance on this is we're at an age now where athletes are bigger, faster, so much more developed than they have been in the past, that it's going to be damn hard to replicate things we've seen in the past in the future. Now, I can't say there's not going to be someone like Tom Brady because someone gets on a juggernaut of a franchise like Mahomes or someone, they could do it. But what I'm thinking about more is like the LTs of the world. Like, there's not going to be another LT that comes out that actually changes the way that an NFL defense is played. Aaron Donald is a great player. Aaron Donald has not caused defensive coordinators to change the way that they play the game. Lawrence Taylor changed the way defensive coordinators played the game, and it evolved the game. And I think we're past the point of players making that kind of an impact. And I'll tell you what, if LT played today at his weight back then, he wouldn't be nearly as effective as he is now because he's playing against guys that are so much bigger and faster than what he played against in his day. That's why it's so tough to compare eras.
Not to mention, Scott, that he was way too much of a wild man for this pussy era. He'd have been.
God.
Can you? I mean, if you just go to YouTube and like search for Lawrence Taylor highlights, you just watch them and you're like penalty, 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 penalty. Every one of them is a penalty today. So
true.
Can there be another Lawrence Taylor? No, he'd be thrown out of the league.
Well, that and 6-game suspension,
Great point.
year suspension, definite suspension.
Yeah, it's a great point, guys. Yeah, there can't be in this pussification of America league that we're watching.
Yeah, but I think it goes beyond just him and the way he played. It's more to the fact that so many players have evolved now to where they're so big, so fast, so strong that it's really, really tough for one guy to come in and dominate so much. You're like, this guy is head and shoulders better than anyone else in the league, and you just don't see that anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. I mean, for our younger viewers, you know how sometimes tight ends stay in for a second and chip the linebacker? That never happened before Lawrence Taylor came into the league. You know how the Washington Redskins started this, where they would keep an extra back in the backfield just to help a tackle, block a linebacker? That was invented to block Lawrence Taylor. Joe Gibbs invented that formation to block Lawrence Taylor. So when you talk about these guys that you now compare to a player you never saw play live, you're full of shit. I mean, these guys you mentioned are all great players. You know, Khalil Mack a few years ago, Aaron Donald, but they all have to immediately be compared to LT, right? Is he LT? Is he LT? When offenses start having to go back to the drawing board and reinvent everything that they do and rethink the game when they're playing this guy, then I will say, hey, this guy's on LT's league, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So my pet peeve is more, there was news that came out this week that Tyler Huntley is a quarterback on the AFC Pro Bowl team. So Tyler Huntley played 6 games this year, started 4 of them, had 660 yards passing, 2 TDs, 3 interceptions, and a 2-2 record as a starter.
Yeah.
This guy made the Pro Bowl. Why not just blow up the Pro Bowl? Why not name guys to the Pro Bowl and just leave it at that? Why are we even doing the charade of cornhole and 2-hand touch football and bowling and all this other shit that's going on? I would love to see another one of those like Battle of the Network Stars deals, you know,
yes.
or something like that kind of competition. I love it from a nostalgia standpoint. But why the Pro Bowl has long gone, even for the last decade, it's not been relevant. You know, why are we trying to revive it? Why not just name these guys players and then maybe have a skills competition at the end that includes everyone in the NFL? You know, anyone can be part of it. Tyler Huntley making the Pro Bowl is about the biggest slap in the face to anyone who's a quarterback in the AFC. You know who the 3 quarterbacks are in the NFC, by the way, or AFC are? Trevor Lawrence, Derek Carr, and Tyler Huntley.
What?
Those are the 3 quarterbacks in the AFC.
It's because other guys bailed out and don't want to play and all that, or
well, Mahomes can't because he's in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't know why Justin Herbert's not there. I don't know why Kenny Pickett's not there. I don't know why, Joe Burrow's not there.
Joe Burrow's not there. Joe Burrow's not in the Pro Bowl.
Josh Allen's not there.
Josh Allen, Tua. I mean, you can go down the list. There's lots. I mean,
I have a feeling these guys have just declined to play, right? I mean,
I have no idea.
they get credited for making the Pro Bowl, though, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to play in the fucking flag football game.
Well,
or
that's the
whatever it
thing.
is.
This year, you do have to get, in
Or-
order to get credited, you have to show up.
Yeah, they changed that rule. I remember
Okay.
that.
So I don't know I don't know what you participate in. Maybe to
It's-
participate in the sorry board game that you're playing against the NFC or something. I don't know what the hell they're doing.
The idea of the Pro Bowl died, like it really died in like the 90s.
It died when they left Hawaii, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is going to
Yeah.
sound like I'm being insensitive or callous, but it died when we started caring so much about player safety. To be honest with you, that's just the fact. I mean,
It's true.
the Pro Bowl used to be kind of an entertaining game because they played football, you know, and it was just one more game to watch. And I remember being like, oh, come on, get Tiki back in there, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, once it became patty cake, I mean, they should have stopped that the first year. It shouldn't have taken them another decade to stop that game. It's ridiculous. And it's really, there's two parts of the Pro Bowl that I hate. They're never going to be able to put pads on and play football again because of the player safety issue, and that's fine. But the other part of the Pro Bowl that anytime this goes for television shows, it goes for YouTube videos, anything you can think of. If you open up voting to the general public group of idiots, your results are terrible. You can't just have the general public vote for things.
No, you can't.
And then give people awards and bonuses based on it. I mean, it's so, I mean, if this were still, you know, I don't know, how do they do NFL All Pro? Is that like a media voted
The All
thing?
Pro, I believe, is a media thing. Yeah.
So I hate the media, but I trust them way more to come up with an All Pro team than the fans to come up with anything. You know, the Pro Bowl, the even when it was decent, it had a history of you made the Pro Bowl 1 year too late. So you were already a great player before the fans recognized it. So you made it 1 year too late, and then at the end you hung on way too long. You know, you're a guy who's not even a starter anymore. You're third string at your position, but your name is recognizable. So you're just making Pro Bowls. Like after, you know, that's
Anthony Munoz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Munoz, I heard of him. Check. You know, that's a good example. Junior Seau. Oh, Seau. Yeah, I've heard that name. Check. Guy hasn't played more than a half of football in 3 years. Oh, Pro Bowl material. Check.
So we may not be on next week. I think we're going to air a lost episode of the preseason against the Bengals, which our Jets fan Novak was one of the few that actually downloaded and listened to. But I think we're going to replay that. But since we're not going to be on next week, guys, Super Bowl predictions.
Yeah. So if we do end up doing a short one next week or doing an off day one, do I reserve the right to be able to change this
You can
prediction?
change this. Yeah.
All right. If we come back on the air. Yeah. I am going to say that. So here's where I have a dilemma in this game. I have called on the football gods to make something happen twice this season. And that is when Kansas City did the ring around the rosy play. I said that football gods hate that shit, and you're gonna get punished for that. And then Nick Sirianni's performance all throughout the playoffs and probably throughout the year. I haven't paid attention to this guy, but the football gods do not reward jackasses like that. So the football gods have a dilemma here, and I'm kind of worried about what they might do, like collapse the stadium or something. I don't know what's going to happen.
A tie?
Yeah, we might have a game that like they have to stop and bring the players back to settle the next day.
Do a skills competition, cornhole,
free throws. All right, we're gonna play horse. All right. So I think the football gods are I don't know what they're gonna do here. I mean, they have to get together, have a vote, figure this thing out. But I think in the end, they are gonna decide that ring around the rosy once in a decided game against the Raiders was less asshatty than Nick Sirianni's season-long performance and they're going to allow the Chiefs somehow with Patrick Mahomes, who presumably will be a little bit healthier, to win this game 31-23. Chiefs.
Yeah. Man, I'm dying to agree. That's a great breakdown, Mike, by the way. I love when you bring the football gods into the conversation of predicting wins and losses, because I love doing that myself, and because they're even going all the way back to Bill Parcells. They were, oh no, the football gods, like don't mess around with them.
They won't let you get away with that.
They control a lot of stuff. But man, I've been saying it for, I think you guys know where I'm going to go with this. There's just things happening where I feel like it's the Eagles' year. They've had that look, and it's just like it's one of those things where, again, because it's always about us, right? I mean, it's always about us and our Giant fandom and stuff, and we had one of those years where that we've been begging for, right? For the last, just be relevant, have find our coach, have our team, Daniel Jones, the whole thing. So we had. Like, we overachieved by miles with this Giant year this year, and we've been just so excited, obviously, week in and week out, and all of a sudden it's one of those things where, like, oh no, like, it's just like on top of that, like we've it's almost like I didn't think that, well, we're not going to win the Super Bowl, so somebody has to, and it's like all of a sudden there's the Eagles sitting there. I was dreading the Eagle Cowboy championship game. Thank God we didn't get that. But now we do have the Eagles in the so now we have the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and they have had that sort of, maybe not every single week, but consistently enough. Looking at like the 1 seed in the NFC, and I can't tell you exactly how the game's going to go, guys. I don't have a great prediction. I think I don't know, man. I just see the storyline, the Eagle. I could already see the headlines. Eagles beat former coach Andy Reid. The whole thing. I have a feeling, as much as I believe in Mahomes and Reid on that Chiefs sideline with Jason Kelsey and everything that they can do, I just have a feeling the Eagles are gonna get another Super Bowl win, and I think they're gonna add another one to their, and so now they had none for the longest time, and now I think they're gonna add a second one, and I'm going with a score of I think, and I'm looking at I'm going all the way like 34-24. I think, Mike, it was very close to what you said. I actually have the Eagles winning by like 10. Yeah.
This is a hard game to picture how it's going to play out, isn't it? I can't get a good feel for how this game might play out.
I don't either.
I think it's going to be similar to what we've seen from the Eagles in the first two games, where they have fortuitous breaks that allow them to get an early lead, and they can continue to stay there. So two things I want to mention. First, you guys on video can see Chris's hat of the Sycamore Brewing Company.
That's right.
Which has one of the better beers out there called Mountain Candy, which is one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
But the second part is Sirianni. Did you see the way that jackass was firing up the crowd after Trent Williams chokehold the Eagle and slammed him to the ground, and there was that melee at the end of the 49ers Eagle game? He's fired up the crowd, throwing his hands up, being a complete jackass once again. And this is after he already tried that same bullshit with the going for two on a extra point when they're up 3 touchdowns and deciding, oh, I'm going to take a timeout after all. But I want them to lose. But my mom always used to point out about destiny. And she used to use it more with the Yankees than anyone else. But she said it a couple times with the Giants. I think one of the times was 1990, and she pointed out a couple times during the year. She's like, oh, it's destiny for the Giants to win. The way this season's played out, I think it's destiny for the Eagles to win. They had that easy road in the NFC playoffs. I don't see this game being particularly tough for them, because I think their pass rush is going to get to Mahomes more than the Bengals did. And Mahomes was clearly rattled a couple of times in that game. I think this game is 27-14 Eagles. And I wish it was different, because I have shitty numbers in the football pool. I think I have a 5 for the Eagles. So I'm hoping for 25-14, because I think I win money then. But
well, you never know in this NFL.
Well,
with the
exactly.
going for two. going for 2 or missing extra points.
Well, that's amazing.
I want Sirianni to be an asshole and go for 2.
Remember those shitty numbers of the 2s and the 5s? You hated those. Now those are in play now because
back in play.
That's the one good thing about these assholes going for 2 and missing extra points and all this other nonsense. Yeah.
Yep.
So 8s, 2s, and 5s, they're in play.
The whole board is back. I mean,
it is.
We went through like all time where you had the good numbers. Now, man, it's you.
If you had 0-0, you were assured to make money.
Yeah,
0-0 is excellent. Yeah,
you were getting something.
You guys got anything else tonight?
I'll just add. I actually have a lot, but we're already ran way over, and I thought we were going to be on next week. So, but I do want to get this in. When this season started, the Eagles were on a lot of people's list to be here right now. I know Scott and I think Cardone was with us, thought that was insane.
Yeah.
The questions we had then were like, well, why is this team that much better than last year? And don't they still have Jalen Hurts, who looked kind of like garbage at the end of last year? So what made them pick this team? I still can't answer that question, but I do have to tip my cap to those people who I mocked just a few short months ago. They obviously saw something that we didn't see. Now, I will say this about this Eagles team in hindsight. This is one of the best off seasons any team has ever had. Hassan Reddick, the way he's come on now, and Bradbury, which that was like a extra throw in that no one talked about that much, and of course AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. It was either draft pick this year or last. I don't remember, but they got a lot better very shortly. And I think in this day and age, in this NFL, especially now that we're going to have to beat this team if we want to go anywhere. We need to have an off season like this. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this year. And maybe it's half of this year and half next year. And speaking of Team of Destiny, every weak position the Eagles had, a big name free agent was available for them to grab to fill that. I mean, it just, I'm starting to want to change my pick now because you guys mentioned that just everything is falling their way, but that hasn't just happened as these playoffs have started. That started in the off season.
Yeah. No, and I think, Mike, you're on a great point there when you said, not just it's not just been this year, but we said the same thing in the preseason. We're like, why are these jabronis picking the Eagles?
Yeah.
And I still, I halfway through the season, I was like, this team's going to collapse,
No, they are.
And they never did. And probably part of that's being blinded by being a Giants fan. You don't want to give the Eagles credit, but I don't know if you guys saw this too. The Empire State Building was lit up in green. We didn't touch upon this. What the fuck is that guy?
What is that? It's like, why?
I have no idea.
Did we ever figure out what's going on there?
I have no idea. Was it an Eagles fan that's like infiltrated the Empire State Building? He's like,
well, it's got to be, because you think about this, right? The New York also has an AFC team. Why don't we light it up red for the Chiefs?
They did actually. Right. They did afterwards.
Okay, all right.
So there was a picture of both the Eagles and the Chiefs.
And the other point is, like, I know I've seen them light it up in blue when the Giants, have something good going on. But this is like new. This is brand new. And no, it's a terrible precedent. New York, when it comes to sports, is not the international city. This is the Giants town.
I wish I had thought of this as a pet peeve. Why does the Empire State Building have to get involved at all? Like, what?
Right.
I mean, what?
If this results in never lighting up in a color for a sports team, I am so okay with that. I do not give a shit. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That just gives.
I'm glad you brought that up, Scott. Yeah,
gives Eagles trolls, which every single one of their fans is, some company excluded. Just something to chew on that I hate.
One person
I know.
So I will say this. So next week, we talked about having a bonus episode from the archives. If Chris cannot make the call next week, we might want to have KC or have our resident Dallas fan on the call.
Yeah. If you guys are listening, reach out, and we'll see if we can make that happen.
Yeah. If Casey can't make it, I'd love to have Bry Peacock on. We
Yeah,
need
get him.
we need to have a unified voice against the Eagles.
Yes, we all must unify versus the Eagles. I think this is a yes. We have the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So
So
That's
that's
right.
the way we look at this.
we are the Three Angry Giant Fans. This has been your host, Scott, Giant Mike and Cardone, and hit us up on Twitter at angry_3. We take all questions. We answer questions from anything, any realm.
Yeah,
We'll
White Shadow
answer 'em.
questions.
Like
Yeah.
I said, we went
Yeah.
off the rails a couple times in this episode. We go off the rails every episode. So I don't care if you ask us about feminine sanitary products. We'll try to answer them to the best of our ability.
We'll find an answer. Hey, man, 70s and 80s TV shows, numbers,
All of them.
numbers of fictional sports players, stats for fictional sports players.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bring-
Who sings the theme song of 80s TV shows? You name it, man.
You
We
had-
can
you
do
name
any.
You had the
Yeah.
White Shadow there with Ken Reeves.
Yeah.
I was calling him Ken Howard.
You
It
know?
could have been Ken Barry. There's
Yeah.
all sorts of
Yeah.
What
things
what
out
position does Sam Malone play? Yeah, whatever you want to bring on.
Yeah.
You know.
there.
Yeah.
Pitcher. Wasn't he a pitcher?
He was a relief pitcher.
Yes.
Yes.
All
Did
right.
he have a nickname? Did he have a nickname that they called him?
Mayday
Slinging-
Malone, I think.
Mayday
wasn't it?
Mayday
Malone.
Malone.
I think it was
Mayday
Mayday Malone.
I was thinking
Yeah.
of slinging Sammy, but no, that's someone else.
So we have been Three Giant Fans. We'll see you next week, or maybe we won't. Either way, you'll have an episode,
Undecided.
whether it's a long lost archived one or it's a new one. So everyone have a good night.
You
See ya.
guys have a great one.
Take care.